All right. Hey, Craig Martelle coming to you live from the subarctic where it is still dark out. Hey, look at that shit. It's winter. It will change the time. The clock's back this Sunday, and guess what? It'll still be dark all the time. So anyway, we're here. It's snowing, and I think it's snowing where you are. Tell us where you are, Becca.
It is still snowing. We are not subarctic, but we're definitely cold. We're the farthest north you can get in the continental U.S. So I'm in Montana, in Bozeman, Montana, and we just got 8 inches of snow over the weekend, and it stuck around. So I think winter is officially here in October. Yeah.
In October. Yeah. And you said the first snow is still there. It never melted.
It's still here. Yep. It's been unusually cold. So it's nowhere near as cold as where y'all are, but it's definitely cold. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not too bad. It's 29 degrees up here, but it always warms up to snow. That's our, and then temperatures will plummet as soon as the snow clouds go away and it turns crystal clear. And then all of a sudden it'll be like 0.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're here talking with Becca. Let us know what you do, and then we'll discuss about that and talk.
Right. I'm an author coach. I coach authors. I've been coaching specifically fiction authors mostly for 6 years, and coaching beyond that. I started coaching first in 2005, maybe 2005, when I was with a success metrics. Like my official title is a success coach. So as opposed to like a life coach or some other type of coach, my specific desire is to find what is in your way. That's the title, right, of the in the way of your success. So if you think about success as being that target that I'm aiming at, the thing that I want, what is either keeping me from doing that, or what could I do instead to get to that place? And so we specialize in what I call systemic success, which is about how all parts of your life or system function together to either create or not create success for you. So, yeah.
I like that. When I started writing full time in 2015, I left a gig that I had been doing for 7 years, which was business coaching. I worked with Fortune 500 CEOs and their division heads in helping them understand, here's what you're going for, here's your engagement, here's how the front lines interpret what you do and how you can lead them better. So success is important. Success is a mindset, and success is not something like I learned from the Marine Corps that you can yell or beat into somebody. They have to embrace it internally. And I think that's important. And some people, we were talking right before we went live about external and internal motivation. Because I personally, when the power goes out, hey, great, I just jump on, I start working on my whatever I have as a whip. And some people, they're lost because they need other people to yell at them and say, hey, you need to get writing. We need to do a sprint. We need to, and how do you rectify and resolve that internal versus external motivation?
Yeah, usually like one of the biggest differences and we were talking about this also earlier, is I wish that I was internally motivated, right? Like, because I see other people who are internally motivated, but I'm not always aware of the fact that I need other people to care about my success, or to care about, let's say, a deadline, for instance. Like, one of the biggest questions that we get a lot is, why can't I meet deadlines that I set to myself? So I'm constantly saying like, oh, I'm going to have the book done by this date, and then it's not done by that date. And so as a success coach, what I'm doing with the individual person, we're sitting across from them and saying, okay, why is this happening? And one of the biggest reasons is that extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation, right? It's if you are externally motivated, then all the other things that you have committed to that have more external pressure for you, like let's say your kid's soccer game or the volunteer job that you have or whatever, because those have an extrinsic source of motivation, you're going to respond more to those than to the deadline that you set for yourself. So it's like, if you can be conscious and aware of how you're wired, like how your brain is functioning, then we can use that to help you find a way to be successful in whatever it is that you want to be successful in.
And if you need me to yell at you, I can set up appointments. and 2 minutes is all it'll take. I'll give you the knife hand, the Marine Corps knife hand,
Yeah.
and I'll yell
Yeah.
at you, write your damn book.
Yeah.
I've never had that problem. I've been internally motivated for my whole life, and it's different. But that's why you're on the show, because you need to understand different perspectives and how different people operate in order to make the best you. Or as I put as a title when I had really no clue, is get out of your own way.
Yeah.
If your way is being held up because somebody, the squeaky wheel's getting the oil, and the squeaky wheel is something that's like number 20 on your priority list, but you want the squeaky wheel to go away. Now you got number 20 as number 1, and what the hell are you doing? I mean, you've
Yeah.
got other stuff to do, and this is the prioritization of your work is critical. And like Becca, having an external coach, it helps to it shines the light on what's important. And as a business coach, one thing that we did was we shined the light on the metrics that were most important for the business leaders to act on. Sometimes they measure bigger business, they measure everything, and they'll post and it's like but you have that measure. It says you're 10 today, you were 8 yesterday. It means nothing. Nobody does anything different. But if you actually act on those metrics, those are the ones you want to show. So on your own business, if you have your priority list, 1 through 5, how are you doing on number 1? You have to answer that question first. And if somebody is asking you, that makes it even better, because in business, one thing we did for the front lines is those people most engaged in the work was they discussed it every morning. Here's where we are. We're at 10 versus 8. Good job, guys. Here's what we did to make it different. Let's get more of that. Go forth and conquer. And so every day, we called it a crew talk. They would review how they were doing. Imagine if you had to do that for your own business.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest things that we see, and I'm so glad you brought up the way that corporate business functions, right, versus the way that author businesses often function, is that we don't have a boss. Like, our boss is ourself. And so if you're not a person who's conscious of, like, how would I have worked in an office environment, or what might I use to motivate myself, then asking those questions, I think, is one of the most important things that you can do as an author. Like, we all talk about things like, let's take the author business seriously, but then also that includes a level of self-reflection about, okay, why am I not getting what I want? Like, to talk about the deadline specifically, instead of saying, I'm going to set more, let's say, internal deadlines, right? I'm going to set them more consciously, or like I'm going to make them shorter. Instead, try setting an external deadline to somebody who matters. And I think it's a great example of this, right? Like Craig said, I'll schedule you 2 minutes of screaming to make sure that you get the book done, right? And I was like, the way that would work is that people actually value your opinion of them, right? It can't just be like, oh, I'm going to set a deadline with my mom, unless you have my mom, who will actually yell at me if I don't get something done.
Yes, she will. Yes, she will.
And if I actually care about her opinion, right? Because that's the key in the external motivation. It can't be a fake deadline if you're externally motivated. It can't be, if I don't post to this group, well, who in the group is going to follow up with you to make sure that you did it? It has to be somebody whose opinion you care about and take seriously, or else there have to be consequences, right? Like, pre-orders are a great way to set external motivation, because you take Amazon seriously as an author, or whoever it is, right? Whatever distributor you use, you take them seriously. So the external motivation has to matter to you. It can't just be like some random thing. It has to be somebody whose opinion you care about.
I like that. That's a very important thing. Somebody whose opinion you care about, who actually cares about you. In doing this, because they know that deadline is important. You cannot miss your pre-order deadline with Amazon, otherwise you get put in jail for a year, and unless you try to beg them, it's better just to hit the deadline. And the way to do that is we had milestones, right? Here are the publication milestones. Well, then you break those down in inch stones, and okay, because they paid consultants a lot of money to come up with a term like inch stones.
Yeah.
All right, it may be bullshit, but there's a lot of steps to get where you want to go.
Yep.
Everything you do in life, there's a lot of steps. As you're writing a book, you've got a chapter, you've got scenes, you've got characters, you've got background, you've got world, you've got all of this stuff. And oh, by the way, Why don't you start your newsletter? How about your landing page? What about your brand? What about, and you get all this other stuff in it, and it's just overwhelming. And that's why I tell
It
people,
overwhelms.
learn what you need to know when you need to know it. Until you've
Yeah.
written that first book and you know your process and you know your inch stones in creating your book, don't waste your time with anything else.
Yeah.
It will come. The most important thing you can do for a long-term career is write a great book. If you're just jamming words and throwing them out there, hey, you may be able to sell that first book with some cool a cool blurb and a great cover, but you'll never sell the second book. Nobody will
Right.
buy your stuff after they get in that first book and see, hey, this isn't very good, or it
Right.
hasn't been. There's a typo on every single page. And one of my favorite authors, the first book I read of his had a typo every single page, and I'm like, what the
Oh,
hell
wow.
is it? But the story was so good,
But
and
the story was good.
I'm not talking Michelangelo. I'm like, it was a Marine story, a space Marine. I'm like, I love this shit. So I was
Right.
all in, but still, I'm like, dude, man, until I got to know him better, I'm like, dude, man, you got to fix those typos, God, please,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a get out of your own way moment too, right? Like, is it going to lose you readers? Because in some genres, that will absolutely lose you readers if you have too many, typos. And then in some, it won't, right? So
Yeah.
you have to know your audience as much as you have to know yourself. That's crazy.
So if you type a question that you want to bring up to the to Becca and me, I mean, I'm just here in the twilight zone of Alaska. And I do have a light shining in my face, but I still look weirded out. It's Halloween is almost here. This is my costume,
Yes.
and go Rush. Of course, I have Rush. Test for
Oh,
Echo
nice.
is my shirt. So as the questions will pop them up. Oh, hey, we have a question. Let me grab the wrong mouse. There we go. Oh Christ! What the hell are you doing to me, people? Hang on
That's a
just a
great
second.
question.
All I saw was question. I'm like, oh, let me put that over. Let's take a
That is a
question.
great question. Because
Come on,
that's
callers. Come
actually
on.
That's such a really good question too, though, because it highlights the fact that there can be such a thing as too much pressure. Because I
Yeah.
saw above somebody had made a comment of like, oh, I would be terrified to let Craig down if I said that I would meet a deadline. I'm like, ooh, that's a signal that maybe that's not the right person for you to be setting your deadlines to, because terror, like, so there's all these different types of fear that can happen, right? That can cause a block. So the different types of fear that you have, terror is not a great one. Like, it's
No,
not a great one. Yeah.
and that's the new Marine Corps. As I was getting towards the end of my career, and I retired almost 20 years ago. As I was getting towards the end of my career, the fear motivation is important, but it wasn't important from generating fear. It was generating respect. Like
Yes.
your leaders, your sergeants, your lieutenants, they would be in front of the platoon running forward, and that was important. It was, don't let him down, as opposed to just having, oh my God, if I fall back, somebody's going to yell at me. Well,
Yeah.
yes, but that's because you're letting him down. So they're letting you know that you're letting him down, and you should fix your shit. Um,
Yep.
yeah, fear as a motivator is only good as long as the person who's generating that fear is right there. And
Yeah.
this is something we ran into in the shipyard. We had some serious flamethrowers for superintendents and supervisors, and it made it extremely difficult because they would be there, they would be denigrating their people, and the second they walked off, the people would go on smoke breaks and just be pissed, and their work was substandard. And it's like, this is a leadership issue. It's not your crew is bad. So
Yeah.
it was very important to understand. So external
Yeah.
versus internal motivation. External should lift you up. Like, hey, let's meet
Yeah.
this deadline. I'm going to write too while you're writing, so let's do this together. And that's why sprint groups. Mal Cooper has a sprint group, and she just starts YouTube, no conversation, just dive in, get the words, be motivated, celebrate success after 20 minutes, and go get a Pop-Tart.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question. How do we get out of our own way when we used to write in other spaces but can't now because of COVID?
Right. So this is a huge one. This is one of the most common questions we get right now in coaching is, my external situation changed now. So how do I find a way to do this? And depending on whether you're a person who's motivated by stability or not, because not everybody is, but if you are a person who's motivated by external stability, so think of it as, if everything is copacetic in my world and nobody needs anything from me right now, then I can focus. And if they don't, then I'll constantly be thinking about that. Not everyone can clear the decks in that way. So if you're a person who's like that, the only ways to get around this are to find spaces where you are not accessible to those people, or where you can get away from all of the stuff that is coming at you. So the more responsive to data you are, the more important it is to do things like don't reach for your phone in the morning, turn off all of the places in your news feed that are making you have and feel stress, so that you can have that clear sense of direction when you're sitting down to write. A lot of writers we're seeing do things like getting in their car and going and writing in their car, and literally driving to a parking lot somewhere and writing inside of their vehicle, because they can't get away from their kids inside of their home, because their kids are all home from school. And not everybody is a write in the morning person. So not everybody can just get up at 4 o'clock and write. But if you can, that's the first thing that I suggest trying, is to write in your own house, in your own space, before everyone else is awake, if you can do that. But definitely one of the ways to get unstuck is to try to find that spot where you can replicate what you used to have.
And in regards to being trapped inside with and now you're homeschooling and all that stuff, you have to change either the location or the time. You can have the same location, but you have to do it at a different time when there's not a shared space. And if you're a single parent, I wouldn't recommend getting in your car and going someplace to drive, driving someplace to write, but writing when they're not up, or putting them to bed, or having a certain quiet time, and doing everything you can. You have to change your situation and then make it a habit. It will be difficult at first because nobody else wants to change with you. The kids want 100% access all the time, and
Yep.
now they're not going to get it. And if they can help flex with you, then so you have to change the circumstances under which you find the writing space. And space could be either the time or the location. So something has to change, because your old world changed. That's different. So now you have to accept that and carve out or find a new dig out, get out that shovel and find a new space in which to work. And
Yep.
that's not always easy. Some people have 4 kids. One person I know that has I think 7. And getting that time to write is almost impossible nowadays with all the different school schedules. And maybe sometimes it's you take 5 minutes and you work on an outline, and you just don't burden yourself with, I have to get these words, I have to write. You have to write, but you have to keep your sanity too. And I know Becca talked about your internal health, because you can't be driving yourself into an early grave because you have to get the words, kids are driving you mad and you're insane. You file divorce papers because your husband's driving you nuts. And all of that, I mean, divorces are at an all-time high. And this is so people are really stressing. Do not add, even though, yes, I like that extra $500 a month or whatever you're making from your writing, but if it's going to kill you and destroy your family, maybe that 500 isn't worth it. Maybe that investment, but do those outlines, do something different. Even if it's 5 minutes dictating on your phone, have it translated to text, and then tuck those outlines away for when the situation changes. And now, hey, I've got all these great outlines. So now it takes you half the time to write the book. And all of a sudden now you've got 8 books out next year instead of 3. Because you took the time to outline now when that was all you're capable of doing. So just your fans will understand, because everybody's in the same situation. Madrid, 20 Books Madrid, right? The coolest conference ever. Spain is locked down till May. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to do it. We're still hanging tough, but fuck. I want to go to Spain, but I'm not going to know if I can until maybe June, and we were supposed to have a conference 5th to the 11th. Still working on it, mind you, but everybody's closed. And individual regions can lock down. It's just a complete shit show. And we're doing what we can. So everybody's world has changed. Even me trying to have conferences and do things for you guys so we can get together, so we can talk about books, so you can stay motivated. The world is conspiring against us right now on that, but not the ability to jam words or create stories, entertain or educate, which is what we do. So everybody be cool, think coolness, and then let me roll up a new question. There's I saw one here. Hang on just a second. How do we prevent burnout?
So we talk about energy management a lot when it comes to coaching individual writers, because what we're not always aware of is the way that we spend energy in order to make life happen. So I use the metaphor of having a bank and having energy pennies, because it's a very small measurement of energy and it can be spent quickly and it adds up quickly. So being conscious of what drains pennies from you and what adds pennies to your bank is really important. And here's the example that I use. So I get up out of bed in the morning and it costs me a certain number of pennies literally to hoist my body out of bed, right? Because I'm post 40. So I can't just spring out of bed the way that I could when I was 20 years old. So it cost me a certain number of pennies to get out of bed. It cost me a certain number of pennies to decide what I'm going to wear in the morning. It cost me pennies to do everything, but it also cost me pennies to make decisions all the time. So when I turn on Facebook or I turn on Twitter or Instagram or anything, and I'm constantly spending pennies making decisions, do I ignore that? Do I feel something about that? Do I listen to that person? Do I go research this thing? Like, we have to be conscious of how much drain happens on our energy just by doing normal life. So much so that when we get to a point of high stress where we know we're draining pennies constantly, but we're not doing anything to create pennies. So one of the biggest ways to prevent burnout is to become more aware of your energy management and to do things intentionally that make energy for you. So we call them generative activities, things that generate energy for you. You have to do those. Like, that is self-care in as much as taking a bath or sitting in a spa or whatever is self-care. Some of us need self-care, like getting the things off of our phantom plate that we keep telling ourselves we're going to do. And we need to accomplish those tasks in order to create energy for ourselves. Some of us need to declutter. Some of us need to shut off the internet more often. That will generate some pennies for us. So, like, being conscious of how we spend pennies is maybe the most important thing. And it is very similar to the spoon theory. The reason that I do pennies instead of spoons is that if you make a certain number of pennies every day and then you don't use all of them, you bank the energy. So there is a certain amount of bank that when you have to, like, work harder than you've ever worked before, you can spend all of that energy out of the bank. But then when you end that bank, you burn out. Like, there's no more energy to be spent. So being conscious of how the bank works is maybe the most important part of managing your way to not burn out.
And I look at it as a creative well. You have to keep it filled. You can't keep taking from it and not refilling it. So what you have to do to refill it is that's a personal thing. Sometimes it's you post on Facebook and people are supportive. Hey man, it's okay. Or you listen to these super cool podcasts that aren't actually podcasts because they're video. And just see that, yes, you relate to this. This is your world too. It's how you're seeing the world, and people are okay. I'm going to publish 11 or 12 books this year. And it's okay because my lockdown, not traveling, oh my God, I had so much time. I went to Vegas for a week and I got 2 weeks behind. Holy crap. So now that I'm home, I'm writing. And yesterday was a great day. I wrote like 4,000 words. It was a cool day. Got a lot done and moving forward, getting ready to write more today because I have to write every day. Otherwise, I'll yell at myself. But getting where you want to go, you have to determine the importance level of where and time. Like right now, like I said, hey, I don't have to publish 12 books a year. My plan this year was 4 to 6. That was it. And just because of COVID and being home and being trapped, oh, hey, I get to do all this stuff now. I'm writing and I have all these projects and just great things happened. And already I'm well ahead last year in revenue, so it's going well. I just decided to write more because I had more stories that I thought needed to be told. So that's me. But I don't have kids at home. My wife is teaching full time for the university at home, so she's in the back office, and I'm here in my office. We don't have kids. Our poor dog passed away in January, so I don't even have to take a dog out. And no, I'm not getting another dog because uh, when this is over enough that we can travel, I'm going to be on the road. We are going to be on the road. We're going to go to Spain for a month. That was our plan. I'm going to go drive North America from Vegas to Pittsburgh and visit people every day and have a 20 books dinner every single day during that trip. Just saying, hey, you all survived. Look at us. We're survived. We're still publishing. We're doing the right things. And even if you only got one book done or none during this period, when you come out the other side, how do you see yourself? And I know I posted on this come March, back March, saying, don't look at it right now and vent your spleen and get online and say how screwed up everybody is and the world's horrible and, hey, this guy isn't wearing his mask. What a scumbag. Think about 6 months, 9 months from now, because that was 8 months ago. And all of a sudden, hey, how are you looking at the world now? Well, we know a lot more now than we did then. So being definitive in, and I use the word vitriol, people were angry because their world had changed. They weren't angry at people. They were angry at the situation, and there's nothing you can do about it except, hey, where do I want to be in 6 months? And this will be, hey, in a year, hopefully we can do Spock hands or jazz hands or whatever and say hi, have a meal together, and say we made it through. Now what's 2021 hold for you? And during this time, no, you didn't have to learn a new language. You didn't have to do all of this stuff, because some people said, hey, how you wasted your lockdown if you didn't do if you didn't take care of yourself, then yes, you wasted the lockdown. But yeah, we all gained a few pounds. It's okay. Shit happens. I mean, cookies are gratifying, even if you don't burn any calories during the day. It's still take care of yourself and have a plan. And it's okay if you adjust your plan. It's not okay if you adjust your brand. If you turn your brand into, hey, I'm just going to spew venom everywhere because I'm upset with my situation, then that becomes your brand. Is that really what you want, or do you want it what it was when everything was going well? So I call a crisis as a window into a person's soul. So don't let people look into that. Don't let your soul be so consumed by external things that you can't adjust. Now you're just angry all the time. That's not helping you. How well do you write when you're angry? I mean, as Bill Murray said in Groundhog Day, which this is very much like Groundhog Day, lockdowns, mask. He said, don't drive angry, to the poor groundhog who was driving angry. So, you soothe the groundhog. Don't let it drive angry. I don't even know what we were talking about. I think I'll post another question over here.
Oh, about burnout. We were talking about burnout.
Michael Anderley is heckling me.
Nice. For the sentence enhancers, was that it?
That's no, and he should talk. Well, he's cleaning up his C&M show language, though. I am not. I'm actually better in person. I swear less in person. It's crazy. Okay. No new question. What do you have to tell people? What's good for somebody to look forward to 2021? How can they best plan?
So I feel like there's, and this is kind of the core of what I believe about having coach authors and just having coach such a high volume, like such a high number. There is no one thing that's going to work for everybody. And I think this is the key, is that we get so caught up in author world about looking to people who have had success and assuming that if they've had success, then their system is going to work for me. And so we go and look for people trying to fix the problem. And we don't acknowledge, like, when I'm different from that person, that means that I can't use their system to get the success that I want. So I have to find the success that works for me. And there's so much about this time that we're going through that is different from what has been in the past. But there is also a sense in which it's always the same, right? Like how you act right now is going to be similar to how you've acted in the past and how you would act in normal life. So finding your system right now is maybe more important than ever. Because I just want to highlight something that Craig had said earlier that can be so important. in thinking about how do I adjust right now is that if you can't write and you can't work and you can't release right now, your platform will rebound. You will be fine, right? Like taking some time off to make sure that your health or your mental health is okay. Like you can still publish next year, even if you can't publish right now. But this could also be a gift, the time that we're spending right now to be able to figure out how do I work the best? What works for me? How am I different from somebody else? How am I motivated? How will I be successful? You can still do all of that work. You can still do business work. You can still do prep. But for a lot of us, when we're in high stress, we can't be creative. And knowing that there's a difference between the different types of thought processes that happen. If I can't be creative, I'll be able to be creative in the future. It's still going to happen. We will be fine. This will all return, right? So part of how we get through all of it and how we plan is some of us really need to release the pressure of the fact that I have to be perfect right now in the middle of COVID. And we need to acknowledge that we're going to be able to recover from this, even if we have to take a break or a blip.
A question: if your motivation is external but you don't adapt to change well, and something not on your schedule or to-do list comes up, how do you keep your priorities?
Yeah, this is a great one. And because I know that Sally has a particular, like I know Sally, right? The person who asked the question, and I know her personality. So one of her personality traits is that she commits to things very hard when she says she'll do them, right? So if I'm a person who does that, then I say, I'm going to release a book on October 1st, and then COVID happens and I can't write for 6 months. But then October 1st shows up, and now I feel more and more guilty progressively every day that I haven't released a book. So one of the ways that we can do this, and that wasn't Sally's situation, but that type of personality, right? So one of the ways that we can adjust is by reminding ourselves that when things happen that are out of our control, we have to release that thing that we couldn't control. So, and to use the Morpheus phrase, right? What happened happened and couldn't have happened in any other way. So if I didn't write because of COVID, because my kids are home, because of shutdown, and I missed a deadline, then I have to release the expectation that I should have been able to do that. And I have to adjust to the present moment reality, right? And that can be hard for some of us because, and under this question is also that question of the future, because but I had laid out all of these plans that now aren't going to happen. And one of the hardest things for people who are future minded to do is to release the future that I saw happening when something changes, and to say, I could not have anticipated this coming. So I have to grieve the future that I saw that had happened and all of the things that subsequently happened because of that, and then walk myself back to today and move forward from there, right? And allow myself to reimagine the future instead of holding on to what didn't happen. So I think that big piece of motivation is, if you don't let go of the future that isn't going to happen anymore, then you're never going to be able to replace it with what could happen. And the fact that what could happen might be better than what you even thought would have happened in the past. And so that's a really huge deal about motivation is, what is it that you saw happening and how do you adjust that thing that you saw?
I'll actually take a completely different tack on this question. And
Yeah.
your priorities are your priorities. If it's to make more money because your family needs it, because you're right on the edge of being able to put food in your kids' mouths, then your priority needs to remain making money to put food in your kids' mouths. So that hasn't changed, but the timing, maybe the schedule of things need to change. And this is where you need to forgive yourself if you can't meet a current schedule. However, you need to challenge yourself and be realistic about what you can accomplish. So the priorities, and as I tell people, I had this argument with the heads of all the minds in a Fortune 500 company. Okay, the company leadership was there, and all of their plant directors were there. And I asked them, what is your number one priority? And one guy wrote down 10 things. I said, no, you can only have one. He's like, but I work on all 10 simultaneously. I said, no, you don't. You switch quickly between them and you have them all in a various stage, but you can only work on one thing at one time. And this is because it's like, okay, I'm going to write this email, but also, yes, I've got on my other screen, then you're writing that email. That is your number one priority at this moment. So when you set your priorities, you also need to understand the diagram. Here's what's in your control. Here's what you can influence, and here's all the other stuff that you really can't influence or control, like COVID. Okay, that's out of there. But what can you control? And this is, it might be, well, okay, now I've got my kids, so my control of, I had 8 hours a day all to myself. Now it's 1 hour. Now it's 15 minutes because now I got to cook the little bastard's lunch. I mean, okay, I mean your kids.
My children. Yeah.
Yes, the gifts of your partnership.
Yes.
So yeah, you got to cook them lunch, you got to cook them breakfast. There's no respite. We understand that, but now, okay, based on what you can control, what is your priorities now? And if it's like, hey, I got to take care of the kids. Now, kids might move up to number one when previously they were number one when they were home, but 8 hours a day you had all to yourself. And now, and they became number one as soon as they got off the bus. But now, understand that. So re-wicker your priorities based on your time and then go after them. What's on your control? That's so significant to understand what is in your control. And it's not, hey, make the kids sit there and watch Pinocchio for the 900th time so you can write some words. Shut up and watch Pinocchio. My son watched Pinocchio 2 or 3 times a day. And I'm like, this can't be healthy. Now he's a teacher, so and 2 kids of his own. So good luck. I'll send him Pinocchio on DVD and see how he likes it.
Yeah. Now it's Frozen, right? Like now it's Frozen.
Frozen. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And they're singing. I think there's some singing in that show.
They're singing.
I like Moana. All right. So
Moana.
The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
And he's singing with his daughter, and she still doesn't think he's the character. So that's hilarious.
I love that.
Hey, it is what it is. We got another question. I think I missed one. Do you have any suggestions for determining when it's an important detour and when it's just avoiding getting started? I think she needs to yell at her.
Yeah, she might. So the determination here for me is always, can you see what to write next? Like if you can't see what to write next, then you need to go and find that. So there are people who need to think a lot more and process a lot more to create the words. The archetype we use for this is we call them bread machine writers, right? Where some people need to take all the ingredients from outside of themselves, put them inside their head, close the lid, and let it work until the idea is finished. And if you try to pick the idea out before it's finished, it's goop. You can't make a sandwich with it. So for some of us, we have to keep cooking those ideas and cooking them until they're ready to come out. So if you can't see what happens next, then you have to do, and what we encourage people to do is something called a stuck list. So when you get stuck, to have a list of things that you can do that will make you generate whatever you need to generate to move forward. But the way that I tell the difference between resistance and literally needing to continue to do whatever quote unquote procrastination thing that you're doing to try to generate the words is, can you see what happens next? And if you can see what happens next and you're not writing it, that's resistance. That is one of those just sit down, swallow the frog, open the manuscript, close Facebook moments. But if you can't see what happens next, or you don't know what's the next sentence you would write, then you need to go and figure out what that is. Like you need to go and either think or ideate or talk to someone and figure out what happens next. And then you can start writing from there. But if you don't know, you can't write it.
That's a good point. You need to know what you're going to write. And that makes things easier. Like I said earlier, if you can't write right now, but you can still create, your mind is active, even if you only have 1 minute in between crying spells from, one of your 15 kids, or you're watching the neighbor's kids. You've got everybody's kids in your house and you're almost insane, but almost isn't quite insane. And insanity leads to probably some of the best stuff. Look at Stephen King's work when he was all doped up. Oh my God, a genius, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't do that. Don't get all doped
Yeah.
up
Don't
taking
take Coke. Yeah. I'm not encouraging you to do cocaine. Please
no,
don't
no.
leave this video telling people that that's what Becca suggested.
But weed is legal in Montana and it's legal in
Right.
Alaska too. So
Yeah.
weed. The closest
Yeah.
store to me is a weed shop. I have to drive by it every
Oh,
time I
nice.
drive into town. Yeah, open. Well, they're not open 24 hours, but they're open till like midnight. Um,
Nice.
the when it's an important detour, and this is you really need to know yourself because yourself, is it a detour because you just don't have the story down, or is it resistance as Becca described, and you just don't want to do it? You're not motivated because your last book sales were off, and you're questioning your abilities, and you're not going to get better if you don't keep writing. And this is if you want to make it a career. And once again, the priorities, where does writing fall in your life? Some people it falls at number 10. Perfectly fine. Just know yourself and know what you're capable of and what you want to accomplish. There are a lot of people in this group who want to go full time as an author. You need to work freaking hard. You need to make the time. You need to become a 4 a.m. writer. You need to, whatever is in your capability and ability, you need to do, if that's truly your goal. If you want to just sit at home like me in my I'm not in my underwear, by the way. I have clothes on. Just because Becca's on the other edge, she'd look at me funny. I'm not Jeffrey Tubin. So anyway, if that's what you want to do, and you want to work from home, and you want to realize a level of success, then you have to write better and better stories. You have to improve your marketing game. You have to up your game all the way around. But you're going to find that you're already strong at some of these things. I think AD asked, have I ever taken the Strengths Finder? No, I don't do online tests to figure out what kind of potato I am or anything like that. I do know I'm an INFJ only because they made me take it as part of my transition out of the Marine Corps. Hey, everybody take your personality test. What the fuck for? Anyway, I did it, and hey, okay, INFJ, have a nice day. Whatever that's worth. I got books right. So what's in your control? Take control, and if you don't have control of it and your life, and this is the thing that I think Becca needs to address, is life balance. That has to be a huge amount of your coaching because people are stressing themselves out and weirding themselves out over, oh my God, I'm not getting the books published. I'm not getting them written. Well, you just lost 8 hours of your workday every day. No kidding. You're not getting them. Forgive yourself, reprioritize what's in your control, and then move forward. But damn, you have to have that work-life balance. And when you're home all the time, that shit all gets intertwined and you don't know what you're doing. Now you get to work 16 hours a day, whether you want to or not, just because, hey, you're there, you're at your computer, and the TV's broken because, hey, nobody's working. You don't have enough money to replace it. And oh my God, the world is spinning out of control, and it's not. It's your world has become more condensed. Take control of what you can control. So talk to us about life balance.
Yeah, so there's definitely life balance is different for different people. I think there are people who are instinctively more competitive, people who instinctively want to work harder than other people. And I don't mean it that in the sense of people who aren't like this are bad, but there are people to whom life balance is sort of this doesn't exist for me. And so taking those people out of the equation and talking to the statistically 87% of the rest of us, it is important to know, and I think the way Craig keeps talking about priorities is very similar to the way that we talk about it, to know what matters to me the most. And this piggybacks onto the question about how do people's definitions of success differ. If I don't understand the way that I will feel the most accomplished in my life, if I'm just taking on everyone else's priorities and allowing everyone else to dictate the way that I should feel successful, then I'm not going to be able to find that right balance for myself. I'm not going to understand, hey, if I'm on my deathbed, am I going to be happy that I went to my kids' soccer games instead of doing a 12 book a year release schedule? Right? Yeah, I'm going to be happier that I went to all of my kids' soccer games. Great. Then back yourself off from the expectation that has been set for you by someone else that is not your own. We have this mantra about in coaching about question the premise. So if someone tells you to do something, you have to question the premise of whether or not that's something that really applies to you, because so many of us are not wired in a way that we do that naturally. Some people are. Some people naturally do that. They're like, yeah, that doesn't matter to me, so I'm not going to do that. But if you're not that person, you have to get used to questioning the premise of the advice that you get from people, because if it's not something that you want to assimilate, you can't always control whether you will assimilate it or not. And this is for a lot of complicated neuroscience reasons, but you can't always control that. And so just having that moment of separation of, hey, this is what quote unquote success looks like, but is that really what it will look like for you or not?
And your success, it is, and this is something that a coach, a conversation at a 20 books conference, a conversation over dinner with another author, what do you want to accomplish? If it's, and this is where what's in your control. Well, I want to be like Castle and have a Ferrari and do book signings at
Right.
the biggest bookstores in New York City. That is not in your control. What's
Right.
in your control is writing a great book. Do you want adulation of the fans? Well, then you have to write for those fans and deliver them exactly what they're expecting, and you get their adulation, you get the 5 stars. The most important thing is taking really what you want. Because if it's like, I want to be rich, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I can tell you and help you to be a better author, to target genre equals marketing, target a better genre for what you write, and all of those things that we do in 20 books. It still comes down to you. What are you capable of doing?
Yeah.
And if it's writing great books, and it has to be, because those sell. Great books will sell. And even a great book you wrote 5 years ago, but hey, you had a crap cover on it, your blurb sucked. We can still sell that book. We just put a new cover on it, target that audience better. All of those things. It's what's in your control. If it's, I'm going to build this audience based around my world of in science fiction and romance, and then grow it from that's eminently in your control. Especially if you take feedback and people are like, oh, hey, you had a subplot hanging that you left it hanging, and I don't know where it goes. Hey, do a quick rewrite, add that in. One person complained, oh my God, I'm losing all my readers because they're pissed at a cliffhanger. I don't see it as a cliffhanger. And that's the same thing I've done. It's okay, I'll let you take your imagination. Hey, they all live happily ever after, right? But I didn't say it. And she changed it. She added 2 sentences all at the end of her story. And she went from like 3 stars to 5
No more
stars.
complaints.
2
Yeah.
sentences, because it
Yeah.
resolved the alleged cliffhanger, and it wasn't in her
Yeah.
mind, but it was in the readers. And understand that with those little things, it makes you that much better, and you keep moving forward. So, what's in your control? If you hate marketing, it's okay to hate marketing. Most people do, because you feel dirty when you do it the wrong way, and people are like, get out of here. Hey, can you buy my book? Get the hell out of here. No, it's marketing is different. It's a strategy for getting your book in front of people most likely to buy it. And that's different than, hey, buy my book. um, and that's all. 20 books of 50K will show that. But that's where, own that part of it. You don't have to like it, but you still have to do it, and you reap all the rewards from that. Well, I just want a trad pub contract. Well, then don't leave your day job. And that's what I tell people. And I'm kind of merciless on that, because I have 4 books trad, and I would have never have been able to leave a day job with that.
Yeah.
I can leave the day
Yeah.
job because of my self-publishing, because I reap all the rewards of what I write. And I've built a readership that is growing bigger and bigger, and it's so good, and it's gratifying, and I get a lot of fan adulation, which everybody likes. There are two types of people in the world: those who like positive reinforcement and those who don't admit that they like it. But everybody responds well to positive reinforcement. So if you get negative reinforcement, you publish a book and you get 1-star reviews and 2-star reviews, and people are like, oh man, like my very first book that I wrote, I was over on that other site, and one of the comments was, don't leave your day job, or hey, you should probably think about not taking up writing. And it was a cascade of bullshit comments. And I'm like, oh my God. And look at me now. I guess I've done okay, because you learn. Anybody who thinks their first book is going to be the magnum opus, you're probably wrong. You got to keep writing, and that's in your control. Keep writing, take that feedback, and go forward. And the reason they said all those mean comments was because the cover was bad. It was a really bad cover, mind you, but it was bad. And that's like, hey, you're not cut out for this business. Hey, fuck you, man. Let's take a look at a different cover. And this is where Michael Anderle is like, hey, man, let's take a look at a different cover for you for this series. And we did. We found a great cover designer, great covers, and guess what? Biggest selling series that I have that's made over 6 figures on that one series. So hey, good on me for adjusting. And 20 books to 50K, we don't want to be dropping FUs on people, because what do you need to do better? And this is what we're about. And are you willing to embrace what it takes to do better? So that's important, because if you want to make a career full-time, if you just want to make an extra $500 to make the mortgage payment each month, that too, here's what it takes. You can do it with 1 book a year or 12. You can do it with novellas. You can do it, but each thing takes a different strategy to make it happen. And so understand for priorities, understand what you're capable of doing. And this is the critical thing. And it probably helps to talk with another author, talk with a coach, talk with somebody you respect about what you want to accomplish. If it's painful to write, if you're getting out and it's painful to write, you should never hit that point. And if you do, then you need to reassess where it is, because nobody should drag themselves through broken glass to write and publish a book. You should enjoy parts of it. Some people don't like the writing part, but they really love the selling and marketing part. And so they write, hey, because it's cool. And some people are writing because it puts food on the table and they're good at it, but they don't necessarily like it, but it's still, that's their job, and they have embraced that. So it's so critical to align what you can do with your goals. If you want to be the rich guy in New York, nobody knows how to do that for you, where you're driving a Ferrari and you're lending it out to your cop friends. And now, next question. Yeah. How do we increase our, I thought it said photo size, so I'm trying to look through my your plate size.
Plate size.
Your photo size, you give it to a pro. And
yeah. So plate size, just from, and again, talking about this from a burnout perspective, right? The plate metaphor is something we talk about when we're discussing burnout. So if your plate size has shrunk because you've gone through burnout, because that will happen, we talk about plate sizes 1 to 9, etc. Everybody has a certain size that they tend to be. And then sometimes when you burn out, your plate size will shrink where you can't handle as many things. The first thing I would say is almost everybody thinks that they have a smaller plate than they do, because they're not aware of all the other things that are on the plate in addition to the stuff that they're conscious of. So like a lot of people, for instance, who have children in the house will be like, oh, I only have a size 2 plate because I can only get this much stuff done. But they're discounting the fact that they actually do an awful lot more work than that. It's just that they're only able to carve out this piece for themselves, right? So the first thing I would ask is your plate really as small as you think it is? Would be number one. And are you actually just doing way more than you think you are? But if you have been through burnout and your plate has shrunk because of burnout, like you can't, what we see a lot with authors is either they go from producing, 5 or 6, 7, 8, 10,000 words a day consistently, and then they burn out and they go down to like 0 for a long time. And then they have to build that back up. So what we want to focus on when we're rebuilding post burnout is to increase very small increments at a time and go down to what can I get done right now? And then once I've been doing that for some time, then move up, like move my word count up, my expectations up. But if your plate is small because you're overwhelmed in other areas, which is the most common thing that we see, some of us really have to say no more often to more things, because the reason our plate gets overwhelmed is because we say yes. For instance, every Facebook party, every newsletter swap, every box set, every single Facebook group we can possibly be in, we're in. Every network connection that we can possibly make, we make. And we don't recognize that every time I say yes to something, I'm putting things onto my plate that are actually decreasing my capacity to get done the things that I really want to get done. the capital S success stuff, right? The stuff that I really think is success to me, that isn't just success to somebody else. And so the really important thing when you are that kind of person who's the yes to everything person is to be really conscious of how much I'm putting on my plate every time I say yes to something. And is that really something that I'm going to want to commit to long term? Because for most of us, it isn't. Most of us are desperately looking for a way to get the success that we want. And we think that the way to do it is to do the things that everybody tells us should do. And we never stop to question whether that's actually going to bring us success or not. We just try everything because we're afraid of missing out. And some of us really need to experience the joy of missing out on things because it will create more space on our plates.
Yeah, and understand your priorities. And if you take something, if you tell somebody yes, it's going to take a spot on your coveted and prized priority list. And I keep glancing over the screen because I've got two computers here with two different internets. And in the background, I've got where Jonathan Brazy is complaining about having to shovel snow for the first time in 35 years. And he took a picture of his really crap shovel job. So needless to say, I had to make fun of him. And then Richard Fox is and it's been there the whole time. The screen hasn't scrolled at all. And Richard Fox says it's 60s in Vegas and he's freezing. So
wow.
Everything is relative, and I think that's
Everything's
a great
relative
to what's going on in your life. It's relative to it's going to be different than it was 9 months ago, and it's relative to everybody else, and it's going to be different in 6 months from now.
Yep.
So come March, hopefully I'm driving across the United States, saying hi to people, and we're having dinner and we're talking about things and hopefully helping people to get out of their own way and keep moving forward as an indie. It's okay if 2020 you don't get anything done. It's really okay. A lot of people this year has been horrible for deaths. A lot of people have died, and people I know, science fiction authors, fantasy authors, the best drummer of all time. 2020 has been horrible, and it adds to the impact. And you think about those guys, wouldn't they love to have another week or another 6 months, even if they didn't get another book written or something else? So priorities in this time, family is probably number one for 90% of the people, and that's okay. It's you don't want to push it aside or make them number two when it's prime time number one. I mean, when they were at school, fine. I mean, yeah, if the school called and said, "Hey, Junior is bleeding," I mean, yeah, you were in your car and on the way to go get him. But it's in the rest of the time, no calls. Hey, good, my phone's on, but nobody's calling. Great, they didn't do anything. They didn't break anybody, and just understand it's okay. Forgiving yourself is key because you have done stuff in the last since in 2020 that you probably aren't proud of because hey, we got an election here in the United States and we've got people moving on and we've got people angry and we so much difference. People who have died because 2020 has been a hard year. So yes, things are different. Do what you can. Tell us where they can find you, Becca.
The easiest place is to go to the YouTube channel that we run, the Quitcast, Quitcast, where we talk a lot about all the different coaching, I guess you would call it, the advice that we would give because of what we've seen in coaching. And so that's the easiest place to find us is to go over to YouTube. And I just want to add to that as well. From a success psychology perspective, success is not linear. So one of the reasons that Craig says things like it's okay to take a year off and it's going to be fine is because everybody who's had success understands that success is often not linear. You can go down sharply and come back up sharply. And so some of us who are looking for success and wanting to have success expect it to be step up, step up, step up. So if I step down, that means it's a downtrend, but that's not always what it means when it comes to success. And so just understanding that's why people who are successful say it's okay, is because they know that success is not linear and you can still have wild success with wild failure. It's totally possible.
And you learn more from your failure than you do your successes.
Oh, totally.
And I caution people that hey, they wrote one book and it was wildly successful. They don't know what they did. And most of them don't know what in their second book and third book and all, and that trend is all downward. And they're like, what the hell do I do? And they really get dejected quickly.
Yeah.
It's nice if you have a pyramidal climb, but even I've had those. I've had downwards, I've had up and down. I mean, I share my numbers each month, and you say, hey, with over 100 books published, you should be climbing. It should be like a golden pyramid. But no.
But should you?
Yeah, no. In 2019, I made less money. I made as much money in the first 9 months of 2020 as I did in all of 2019. And 2017 was one of my biggest years. So, but it's consistently high. It's more money than I need. But it's my level of success is seeing you successful. And that's why we're doing C&M shows. That's why we do the 5-minute focus. That's why we run 20 books. The conferences, as well as the Facebook group. It's because we want to see you successful. We want to see the rising tide with all of the people, and everybody will come up together. Even if you don't get anything published this year, it's okay. Think about it, because if you're in this group, you like stories, you like writing stories, you have them in your mind. You have, if you're nonfiction, you have that educational material in your mind. It's like, okay, I can do this. Think about it. So when you can put your fingers back on the keyboard, you can keep moving forward, and you're even better equipped to move forward. You have that. You refill that well. You add spoons. You grow your plate. You have a hoard of pennies, and you go forth and conquer, because you're in a right mind, a state of mind. Don't think I failed so bad in 2020 that I have to just go away. And this is what you absolutely don't want to do, is look at 2020 as any kind of benchmark on your success or failure. I want to do better in 2021. Of course. What's better mean? It means bring more fans. That's really what I'm trying to build my newsletter. That is my number one priority, is building a fan base that will reach up to 100,000. I want 100,000 fan base. That's my goal. So I'm building that, and that is, so I write new books, different genres, trying to bring people in. That is, and so singularly focused, that's number one. And that's, for me, that works. For you, find what's your number one and go after it like a dog on a dropped hamburger. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you very much. It's been 62 minutes. Thanks, Becca, for coming on. A quick cast. If you can jump in the Facebook group and copy in your website or whatever, that would be great, into the comments for this thread. We'll rock and roll and declare victory, and everybody will move forward smartly. Thanks, everybody.